This is about finding that balance between being honest and truthful and compassionate. Being honest and truthful doesn't mean that you need to hurt somebody's feelings. You can be honest and truthful and still be compassionate, to recognize that the person you're sharing the truth with and how they might be affected by it. That this is going to hurt that person even if I give it to them softly. So do I really need to be harsh in my sharing of the truth? Let's be soft. Let's be compassionate. Let's reflect upon how I would feel or what I would want if somebody was sharing that news with me. And maybe you're the type of person that says, like, just give it to me straight, rip the Band-Aid off. So who knows? But having that empathy for another person would give you the wherewithal to know how they would want to receive this information. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of November 24th to the 30th, where we will be looking at this week. Another big week with a ton of transits. Not as many as last week, but we've got 10 transits this week. I mean, wow. Like, we go back over the last 6 weeks. And in the last 6 weeks, there's been 9 to 14 transits, except for 2 weeks ago, we had 5, I think. So just so much moving, so much shifting. What a powerful time. The highlights of the week this week are going to be Venus's transit into Sagittarius, Mercury, retrograde ends. Mercury is direct in Scorpio this week, and Saturn goes direct in Pisces. So a couple planets are returning to direct motion this week as Venus begins transit in Sagittarius. I don't have a Substack essay this week. There wasn't anything that really jumped out to me. I mean, there was one that I could have maybe dug into, but quite honestly, like, I just haven't had the time. As many as you know, I'm expecting twins, and so there is just a lot going into that. And I'll share more later, I imagine. But just really focusing on home and personal life and my wife, and just really grateful to have this time to focus all my attention on Gabriella and our impending birth. And so that's where my focus has been. But I still wanted to do an episode for you all this week, and I'm very grateful for everyone who is listening in. I will have one Substack essay coming out this next week for those who are my paid subscribers, that will cover 5 core questions for Venus and Sagittarius, which will give insight into how to work with the energy of Venus and Sagittarius. Some of which, of course, we will get into on this episode, but they'll just be a little more in depth in the Substack piece. So let's begin, because we've got a lot to cover. We're beginning with Mercury retrograde forming a conjunction with Venus in Scorpio. So Mercury is the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, and coordination, the god of merchants and thieves. Venus is the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, and both of them are forming this conjunction in Scorpio. It's like two ships passing in the night. Mercury moving retrograde, Venus moving direct. In Scorpio, the fixed water sign symbolized by the scorpion, ruled by Mars and Pluto, the gods of war and death. This is this aspect which begins on Monday, November 24th, is when the exact conjunction occurs. You're actually going to be feeling it during the weekend, Saturday, Sunday, before the conjunction on Monday, and then afterwards on Tuesday as well. You'll still be feeling remnants, I imagine, of this conjunction. But it's helping us dive into the deep end of what it means to be intimate and vulnerable, and to really connect with somebody in a deep way where you feel completely and utterly exposed. This is having those conversations that you've been avoiding because they're maybe uncomfortable. Maybe it's like you don't really want to go there, but you can't ignore that there is a place that you have to go because something is festering there in the corner. It's creating tension. It's creating agitation. And it's creating agitation or tension because when you're with this person, you feel drained by being with them. You feel drained because you're not getting what it is that you need from that relationship. So often we'll try to put up a facade because we want to put our best face forward, that everything's okay, everything's wonderful, but then you leave, you're like, oh my God, I got to take a nap. I'm exhausted because of what I just endured. And it doesn't even have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be like you're dealing with, it's probably not big, it's probably not like you're getting in a fight with this person or anything like that, but you're just feeling like you can't be yourself. Scorpio wants us to be vulnerable. Scorpio wants us to be intimate because there is so much power in that intimacy. There's so much power in that intimacy. When you can truly be yourself around another person, and they can be themselves around you, and you have that connection, it's like water. Hydrogen to oxygen. Alone, they're not water, but together they're water. And water is essential to life. Relationships are essential to life. We need one another. We need one another. And no time does that come up more intensely than during this period when there's planets transiting through Scorpio. Of course, the sun is in Sagittarius, but Venus and Mercury are still in Scorpio, so we're still feeling that intensity. And with the sun in Sagittarius, there is honesty coming out. Truth. There's no hiding anymore. The truth is out. So all those things that maybe you had been avoiding having a conversation around is coming up. It can't be hidden. Mercury retrograde is helping us reflect upon the past. Like where does this stem from? Where does this come from? Why do I feel agitated in this relationship right now? Why do I feel agitated? Why do I feel restricted, like I can't say what I want to say? Why am I afraid what I want to say? Remember, Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet of courage. So with Mercury in Scorpio, this is giving us the courage to have those difficult conversations. Venus in Scorpio is stripping you bare, where your senses are completely exposed to those around you. because of that, there's a greater sensitivity. It's like a psychic awareness. It's like you feel someone's like right behind you. It's that twitch, like the scorpion. You're stung before you even realize it hit you. It happens so fast. So this aspect between Mercury conjunct Venus is waking us up. Waking us up to what's going on in your relationships that you've been hiding from, that you've been keeping secret. Because it needs to come to the surface so that you can have the conversation that you need to have in order for you to feel lighter and lifted. Where that intimacy feels good because you feel safe and strong with the person that you're with, whether that person be a lover, a friend, or a business partner. Now, the same day as Mercury's conjunction with Venus, Mars, the planetary ruler of Scorpio, transiting through Sagittarius, forms a square, a tense aspect with the North Node retrograde in Pisces. This transit also occurs from Saturday to Tuesday, November 22nd to the 25th, with the exact square occurring on Monday, November 24th. So this is where the truth comes out. This is the symphony. Mercury and Venus are saying you've got to have that deep conversation. You've got to go into those nasty corners of your relationship where things are accumulating. The difficult feelings are accumulating. You got to go into those nasty corners and clean it out. Talk about it. Mars in Sagittarius, the god of war, in the mutable fire sign, symbolized by the archer and ruled by Jupiter, the god of thunder, lord of justice. Mars is like cutting an arrow through the truth. It's hitting it's cutting right through the lies with the truth. That's what it's doing. It's cutting through the lies with the truth. And it's not even necessarily the lies, but just all the things that you're hiding from. It's cutting right to it. Can't ignore it. The North Node is the soul's purpose, the karmic pathway of the soul. Transiting through Pisces, the mutable water sign, symbolized by the fish and also ruled by Jupiter, as well as Neptune. The North Node. Teaching me so much right now about releasing control and having faith. Teaching me so much about releasing control and having faith. I've been saying that ad nauseum to you all since January 11th when the North Node transited into Pisces. Been saying, take your hands off the wheel, release control, have faith. Yeah, okay, Scott, you want to say that to everyone? Now we're going to drop that in your lap. Oh, you think you're an astrologer? You're going to have control over things? You're gonna be able to predict all this stuff that's gonna happen, and then it doesn't happen. What are you gonna do then, Scott? What are you gonna do then? Well, you gotta have faith. Sagittarius and Pisces are both signs that represent faith, because if you look at the symbol of Jupiter, which rules both signs, it's a cross of matter with a crescent of receptivity pointed out. It looks like if you were like drawing a cartoon of somebody jumping off of a cliff, and you would see that trail behind them of like the inertia that's carrying them to where they're going. It looks like somebody's jumping off a cliff. And they have the faith to believe that they're going to land in a place that is going to be amazing. It's about taking that leap of faith. Mars in Sagittarius squaring the North Node in Pisces is kind of like, maybe when you were a little kid and your older sibling like pushed you into the pool. You were like scared. You're like, I'm gonna jump in right now. I'm gonna dive in, and the sibling just pushes you in because you were taking too long, or they wanted, they're just a jerk. But that's maybe what this feels like, where you're at the precipice and you're like, okay, like, just give me another minute. Just give me another minute. And I'm gonna jump, and they push you. You're gonna get pushed, and it doesn't feel comfortable to be pushed. You're gonna be pushed to have faith, and it doesn't feel comfortable to be pushed to have faith. It feels uncomfortable. This is where the truth is revealed, and the truth may hurt. But remember, ultimately, the truth sets you free. Because even though the truth hurts, it's showing you something that you need to know. And what you discover from what you need to know is exactly what you need to know in order to set you free. And thinking about the previous transit with Mars and Venus in Scorpio, maybe that truth has something to do with your relationships, with a relationship, with all your relationships. Maybe you're learning something about yourself. When you take that North Node in Pisces, the faith comes through really delving deep within yourself and recognizing where the shame exists within you, the guilt, the regrets. Because if you have shame, guilt, regret, if you're blaming yourself or someone else for something in your life that didn't go the way that you wanted it to, then you don't have faith. Because faith is the understanding that everything is in right order, always, even when it doesn't feel right in that moment. And that's the ultimate pain, so to speak. When something doesn't go the way that you want it to, and you've got somebody like me saying, everything happens for a reason. It's like, seriously? Screw you. I don't need to hear that right now. Everything happens for a reason. But at the same time, everything happens for a reason. And this is what that transit is maybe showing us. The truth of the reason that we don't like, that we need to learn in order to set ourselves free and have the faith that develop or cultivate the faith that actually does set us free. So it's a mixed bag in the early part of the week. And it doesn't have to be as dramatic as maybe I'm making it sound right now. This is also about just looking at the nuances in your life. Look at the small things that annoy you, where things aren't going your way. And do some investigatory work, if that's a word, within your mind, your psyche, to process the reasons for these annoyances that are occurring in your life. Where can you show yourself more compassion? Where can you be more empathetic to others? Because part of being vulnerable with others is creating a safe space for others to be vulnerable with you. It's not just about you being vulnerable with them. It's about you having the strength and the courage to create the space for them to be vulnerable with you. Where they know that if they come to you and they share something with you, they share a secret with you, you're going to look back at them and say, I understand you. That's really hard. What you experienced that was difficult. I feel for you. The third transit of the week involves Venus in Scorpio, and the fourth transit of the week, Venus in Scorpio. So the third and fourth transit of the week. Okay. So if I was to do a Substack essay on the week, it was going to be on this, but it was just so in depth and was going to take me too much time, and I did not have the brain power to do it. So we're just going to channel through what comes through right now. We're going to channel what comes through with this aspect, because this aspect, this is like the third time that I've talked about this aspect in the last 3 weeks, and we're going to talk about it again in December, because if you go back a couple weeks with my Substack essays, I did do an essay on the Grand Water Trine between the Sun in Scorpio with Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. Well, last week, Mercury retrograde in Scorpio made a Grand Trine with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and Saturn retrograde in Pisces. This week, it's Venus in Scorpio forming a Grand Trine with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and Saturn retrograde in Pisces. And as we get into, I think it's like around December 11th, 12th, 13th, that is when Mercury direct in Scorpio forms a Grand Trine again with Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. So that's 4 times that you have these 3 personal planets, twice with Mercury, once with the Sun, and right now with Venus, aligning with Jupiter and Saturn, activating all 3 water signs: cardinal water Cancer, fixed water Scorpio, mutable water Pisces. Jupiter, the god of thunder, lord of justice, the planet of luck and expansion. Saturn, the god of wealth and time, the planet of restriction, responsibility, hard work, achievement, and authority. Cancer is cardinal water, symbolized by the crab, and ruled by the moon, the planet of emotions. We know about Pisces because we just talked about the North Node in Pisces. We know about Scorpio because that was the first transit with Mercury and Venus in Scorpio. But let's think about this in terms of the context of these 4 grand water trines. The first one began with the Sun, the planet of vitality. That was 2 weeks ago. Last week was Mercury, the planet of consciousness and communication. This week is Venus, the planet of relationships. And then in a few weeks, it's going to be Mercury again, this time direct as opposed to retrograde, which it was last week. So with the Sun bringing that vital light 2 weeks ago, it was illuminating. It was helping us to see the core of our vulnerability, how we bond with others, how we are intimate with others, how we share ourselves with others, the secrets, our body, our money, our financial information. How do we share ourselves with others? And with the connection to Jupiter, retrograde in Cancer, it was looking at the origin of where that comes from. Because your sense of intimacy is rooted in your bloodline. It's rooted in your astrological code, which is reflected upon your bloodline, your roots, your upbringing, your childhood, the ones who raised and nurtured you, your ancestors, they're the ones that create the foundation for what it means to be intimate with others. Jupiter is expanding our awareness in this area so that we can really reflect upon what is it the root of my relationships. Do you ever wonder, like, of course I knew my parents, I knew my mom's parents. My dad's mom died when he was 17, so I never knew her. But I knew my grandfather, his dad, and his wife. But like going back even further, do you ever wonder, like, maybe if you didn't know your grandparents, do you ever wonder what their relationship was like when they were in their 20s or 30s or whenever they were together? Like you are with your partner? Do you think about your great-great-great-great-grandparents? What were they like when they were in their 20s or 30s or 40s? What were their relationships like? There might be a snippet of what their relationship was like that has been passed down to you. And with Saturn retrograde in Pisces, so Jupiter in Cancer is helping us expand and take a broader look at our past, our origins. Saturn in Pisces is saying, take responsibility for the thoughts that exist within your unconscious mind, deep within your psyche. Like I've been having some really interesting dreams lately. And I love to share my dreams with Gabriella because she's so great at breaking them down, helping me understand what's going on. And I've been dealing with, it's like my masculine and feminine sides have been really battling each other in the depths of my psyche. And I have to take responsibility for that. If you can remember your dreams, take a look at it. Or even if you don't remember your dreams, or, I meet people that are born with that 12th house Saturn. Oftentimes they're saying, I don't remember my dreams. Put some music on. Where does your mind go? When you're driving in the car, where does your mind go? Those quiet moments by yourself, where does your mind go? Whatever comes up, that's your dreams. That's your psyche. That's your unconscious. How are you communicating with yourself? What's going on in the depths of your mind? So when you take those and then the sun's illuminating from Scorpio, and then last week Mercury is making us more consciously aware of what's going on in our intimate relationships and how those are predicated upon our past and our ancestry and how they have influenced our psyche. You're able to take greater responsibility for them. This week with Venus in Scorpio, it's about the feeling. It's about what you're feeling, your senses, your likes and dislikes. What are you feeling in your body? What are you feeling in your body? Think about the people that you're intimate with. A lover, a friend, a business partner, whatever the circumstances may be. When you think about this person, what are you feeling? What are you feeling in your body? And then you take the Jupiter piece in Cancer and you say, where is this predicated upon in my past? And then you bring in Saturn in Pisces retrograde and you're like, how does this come up in my psyche? What are my dreams telling me? Daydreams or night dreams? What are they telling me? What am I learning from this? This is such a special time. Incredible deep work is happening right now around intimate, vulnerable relationships. So get into the mess. Get into the mess. The fifth transit of the week, Saturn, returns to direct motion. So though the Venus transits are happening on Wednesday, November 26th. I'm not sure if I said that, so I'll say that right now. And they're lasting from like Monday to Thursday. But the exact aspects occur on Wednesday, the 26th. The day after, on Thursday, the 27th, is when Saturn returns to direct motion in Pisces. So it's been in Pisces for a bit now. And it's going to, complete its time in Pisces. Won't be back for another 20 some years, 27 years or so. But Saturn retrograded back into Pisces from Aries on September 1st. And then it will move back into Aries on February 13th. Right before Valentine's Day. I just love that. Yeah, that's going to be fun. So, and then Saturn, not going to come back to Pisces until, when's that going to be now? Let me just be more specific with you. It's going to be, in 2052. Oh my God, that's crazy. Really? No, even later. 2053. 2053. Yeah, well, that's 27 years. Yeah, 27 years. So, yeah, we got some time before Saturn returns to Pisces. But let's talk about this retrograde transit ending and what that could mean. So Saturn transited into its retrograde shadow on April 6th. So on November 27th, Saturn is exactly where it was on April 6th. April 6th, where Saturn was, is where it is now on November 27th. Saturn transited into Aries. That happened on May 24th. So think about what was going on for you between April 6th to May 24th. Because part of what was occurring for you from April 6th to May 24th is now going to be stretched out from November 27th to February 13th. This is the third of 3 periods. So think about it like this. April 6th to May 24th, Saturn covered the same part of the sky that it covered from September 1st to now, November 27th. That was the second leg. That was when it moved backwards. So April 6th to May 24th, Saturn moved from 25 degrees Pisces to 0 degrees Aries. And from September 1st to November 27th, Saturn moved back from 0 degrees Aries to 25 degrees Pisces. And then from November 27th to February 13th, Saturn moves forward from 25 degrees Pisces to 0 degrees Aries. Saturn began its retrograde transit actually at 1 degree and 56 minutes in Aries. That was July 12th. Saturn moves out of its retrograde shadow on March 2nd of next year. Take a look at your astrological codes. What is between 24 and 29 degrees in the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, in the earth signs, Capricorn, Taurus, Virgo, in the mutable signs, two of which we already mentioned, Virgo and Pisces, but also Gemini and Sagittarius. Whatever planet or key point, meaning ascendant, midheaven, north, south node, for example, is at 24 to 29 degrees in the 8 signs that I just mentioned, is being called to level up and take a greater sense of responsibility. For instance, if you were born with Venus, let's say, at 26 degrees in Pisces, then you're being called to take greater responsibility for what you're giving and receiving in relationships, to hold yourself accountable and to hold those that you're in relationship with accountable. For those of you who were born, let's give a broad one here. Let's give a broad one, a broad example. If you were born in 05 or 06, if there's anybody listening who was born in 05 or 06, I mean, God, you're like 21 years old, 19 years old. Probably not, but maybe you have kids that are that age. Most of my listeners seem to be more around my age or a little younger, some older, but not too many teens or early 20s. But maybe you have a kid who is born in 05, 06. Those, or maybe even 07. If you were born 05 to 07, your Pluto is in Sagittarius and is being squared by this Saturn. So you're going through, which is so interesting, right? Because I think about this and it's like, wow, we're talking about somebody who's 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. What are you dealing with when you're 17 to 20 years old? You're dealing with an urge for freedom and needing to take greater responsibility for yourself if you want that freedom. And that's what's happening. They're going through a potentially difficult transformation with authority figures. They're wanting to lash out and do what they want to do, and the authority might be saying no. So the way that I would counsel somebody of this age is I would say, what's going on in your mind? Share some of your thoughts. Can you be honest about your thoughts? It could be happy, it could be sad, it could be angry, whatever it is. Be open and honest about it and take responsibility for what's going on there. Can you be compassionate with yourself? Are you being compassionate with yourself? Do you know what it means to be compassionate? Do you know what it means to be empathetic? Can you empathize with the authority and say, well, I can understand why the authority is maybe trying to control me more than I want them to, because even though I feel like I'm an adult, I'm not. I've got a lot to learn about life, so I can respect that, and they're concerned about my well-being. It's just an example. Of course, if you want to learn more about how these transits are affecting you, I encourage you to contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. But this is all about taking responsibility for your psyche from now, as it has been since September 1st, until February 13th. Because once we get to February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day, there's a real sense of restriction regarding the self and self-love. It may be hard to love ourselves right around Valentine's Day this next year. It may be hard to love ourselves. We may be really hard on ourselves. But what we want is to step into that power and take responsibility for what it means to love ourselves greater than anyone else can. It's about looking inward for love rather than outwardly. But in order to do that, we need to take care of our psyche. And that is what Saturn in Pisces is doing, is saying take responsibility for your psyche. The guilt, the shame, the regret, the blame. Where are you being extremely hard on yourself? We need you to be compassionate so you can integrate those thought patterns and memories with understanding, forgiveness, and love for yourself. The sixth transit of the week, just to make things a little bit more challenging, the sun in Sagittarius squaring the moon in Pisces. The half moon in Pisces, 10:58 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday, November 27th. Appropriate, right? Thor's Day, Thor, the Old Norse god, which is associated with the Roman god Jupiter. On the day of Jupiter, Jueves, the sun in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, squaring the moon in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. This is about finding that balance between being honest and truthful and compassionate. Being honest and truthful doesn't mean that you need to hurt somebody's feelings. You can be honest and truthful and still be compassionate, to recognize that the person you're sharing the truth with and how they might be affected by it. That this is going to hurt that person even if I give it to them softly. So do I really need to be harsh in my sharing of the truth? Let's be soft. Let's be compassionate. Let's reflect upon how I would feel or what I would want if somebody was sharing that news with me. And maybe you're the type of person that says, like, just give it to me straight, rip the Band-Aid off. So who knows? But having that empathy for another person would give you the wherewithal to know how they would want to receive this information. And that's a part of the vulnerability, going back to the top of the week with Venus conjunct Mercury and Retrograde in Scorpio. And then Venus forming that Grand Trine in Scorpio with Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. It's about creating that safe space where somebody is willing to be vulnerable with you. But this half moon is holding that tension. It's holding that tension where there's something that you need to share with somebody that you love, somebody that you have emotions for, that might be uncomfortable for them to receive. How do you deliver that information to them without harming them more than maybe you could, if that makes sense? You're delivering it to them in a way that is as painless as possible, even though it's still potentially going to hurt. The 7th transit of the week, Mercury direct in Scorpio. And so, needless to say, all of this tension around the half moon and all these other transits, even though many of them are very supportive, is dealing with the tension of the end of Mercury retrograde. Because Mercury is basically stuck at 20 degrees. Let's see here. Let me get this correctly. So it moves to 20 degrees on November 27th. From November 27th to December 1st. So from Thursday the 27th until Monday the 1st. But really, when you look at it this other way, so Mercury from Tuesday the 25th to Wednesday the 3rd, Mercury moves no degrees. It moves basically 1 degree. Yeah. Mercury moves 1 degree from Tuesday the 25th to Wednesday, December 3rd. So it's not moving. It's just stuck. And that might create some tension around communication and the conversations that you're having in those intimate entanglements. But Mercury goes direct on November 29th. I know so many people will be celebrating. Yeah, Mercury retrograde's over. Hooray! Yeah. Well, the shadow still continues until December 16th. So, yeah. Mercury will remain in Scorpio until December 11th. So where Mercury is on November 29th is where Mercury was on October 21st. Think back, what was going on October 21st that you can reflect upon that connection to November 29th. December 16th is when Mercury moves out of its retrograde shadow. It will be where it was on November 9th. So that's the connection there. But continue to slow down, take your time, be patient in your intimate relationships. Remember, this is in the wake of the half moon in Pisces, where difficult truths may be revealed. So take your time in how you're communicating these truths to those that you are deeply connected to. Slow down. It's no rush. Even though things might be very uncomfortable right now, rushing out of the discomfort might put you in an even more uncomfortable position. Take time to reflect upon the discomfort and where it's coming from. The 8th and 9th transits of the week and the 10th transit, the last 3 transits of the week, all involve Venus. And this is what's interesting. Not to catastrophize here, because that's what I love to do. Always looking at the darkest, most despair, desperate outcome. But, just thinking about this Mercury retrograde ending in Scorpio and in those difficult, deep conversations, uncovering truths or secrets that have been hidden that might be uncomfortable or that might hurt to receive that truth. And then looking at these last 3 transits with Venus in Scorpio opposite Uranus retrograde in Taurus. That's happening Friday to Monday with the exact opposition on Saturday, November 29th. Uranus is the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, independence, the unexpected. So Venus in Scorpio opposing Uranus retrograde in Taurus. Break up! Oh no. So pump the brakes on the breakups, though you might feel that way. But if that's what you feel like you need to do, then that's what you need to do. Then Venus on Sunday, this is the same time period, November 28th to December 1st, Friday to Monday, with the exact trine occurring on Sunday, November 30th. Venus in Scorpio forms a trine with Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Neptune, the planet of dreams and fantasy, illusion, deception, compassion, intuition. The final degree of Pisces. So Venus opposing Uranus retrograde in Taurus, forming a trine with Neptune retrograde in Pisces. Someone tells you the truth of how they're seeing things during that half moon on Thursday. And then by the weekend, you're breaking up with them in the wake of Mercury retrograde. You feel like you've been deceived. You're ready to snap out of this relationship. I'm sick of this. I can't do it anymore. And then the 10th transit of the week, Venus in Sagittarius, the planet of relationships in the sign of freedom. Freedom. Are there breakups coming here this week? Let me know. I'm always happy to hear from you. Love your comments on YouTube, Spotify. If you just love listening to the show overall and you want to comment on more than just this one episode, leave a comment on Apple. I appreciate all your support. Let me know what's going on. How are these transits affecting you? The point is, it feels like there's a lot of instability around relationships the end of this week. A lot of instability. It's like you're in the, what do you call it? It's like the train car on the roller coaster or something, and it just starts like rattling and shaking, and it's like climbing up to the top of the roller coaster and it's coming out, and it falls down and you're like, oh my God. That's what it feels like's going on here, the end of the week. These planets are shaking us out of our shoes in our relationships. Because, think about it this way. Let's go back to the beginning of the week. Okay, what did we say at the beginning of the week? The beginning of the week was about having those difficult conversations that need to be had in your relationships. It's about honing in on those icky, sticky, uncomfortable places in your relationships and not ignoring it anymore. Because guess what? If you ignore it, by the time that half moon hits, and then these final 3 transits with Venus, you might be running for the door. Or they might be running for the door from you. It's not a threat or anything like that. It's just a scenario. I don't know what's going to happen. I really don't. But I just try to come up with these scenarios of thoughts, channeling through. What are the spirits telling me? Yeah, maybe this is what happens. On the other side of the coin, if you are having those difficult conversations at the beginning of the week, by the end of the week, you feel free. You feel independent, but you're also still with the person that you love. You're not breaking up. Because you had the difficult conversation, because you went through the challenges that you were avoiding, that you knew was necessary to have regardless, because you decided to go through it rather than avoid it, the truth is now setting you free instead of hurting you. And that's what this is about. The planets are not out to get you. They're out to help you. But it's like, what do they teach you in lifeguarding? It's like, when you're trying to save somebody, don't let them pull you under. Sometimes you have to smack them, subdue them, so that they don't drown you with them. And that's what these planets do sometimes. It feels like they're smacking you around, but they're trying to save you from drowning. So when you recognize that you have an issue in your relationship that needs to be dealt with, don't ignore it. Because one way or another, it's coming out to bite you. And it could happen this week. So if you address it in the early part of the week, by the end of the week, you feel relieved. You feel free. Because you've shared that difficult truth, and your partner has shared that difficult truth with you back to you, and you've worked it out, and you've processed it, you've reflected upon your past, and you've gone deep within your psyche and recognized how you've been harming yourself that's created this reality, and now you've forgiven yourself, and you're showing yourself compassion, and you're being empathetic to them, they're showing themselves compassion, and they're being empathetic to you, and now you're being open about everything. You've got nothing to hide. What a feeling. And that's ultimately what we want with Venus in Sagittarius, which is transiting from November 30th to December 24th. Venus in Sagittarius is not just there to get you out of that toxic relationship. It's there to help you clear the toxicity within your relationship so that you feel free within your relationship rather than free from your relationship. Dates that Venus has transited through Sagittarius previously: October 13th to November 11th, 2024, December 29th, 2023 to January 23rd, 2024, December 15th to November 15th, November 15th to December 9th, 2022, and October 7th to November 5th, 2021. Think back to those dates for clues on what could be in store for you this time around as Venus transits through Sagittarius. Look back through your text messages, your emails, your social media posts, your photos, what was going on in your life during these dates. It might give you some insight on what could be in store for you from November 30th to December 24th. If you were born with key points or planets in Virgo or Pisces, get ready for some challenges within your relationships. If you were born with Mars in Virgo or Pisces, there is potentially some conflict coming for you between November 30th and December 24th with Venus transiting through Sagittarius. Conflict in relationships. I don't say this to worry you. I say this so that you're aware, so that you're ready to face whatever these conflicts or challenges are courageously, confidently, fearlessly. Or maybe you have fear, but you're able to transmute the fear with faith, because that's what Sagittarius is all about. Faith. When the archer pulls back on the bow and lets the arrow fly, they have faith that the arrow is going to hit its target. This is a period to cultivate faith in love. Faith in love, faith in your love, faith in how you love others, and faith in how others love you. I hope this message has been helpful to you. I hope what we've shared here in this episode is supporting you through the week. I thank you for your time, your energy, and for listening. And I look forward to reconnecting with you next week. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.